The recording I found last night wasn't supposed to exist, but when I pressed play, I heard myself screaming for help from somewhere I've never been. I've been a park ranger for almost 7 years. I've seen wildfires rip through forests, hikers go missing, and storms so violent they stripped the trees bare. But nothing has ever made me question what is real, quite like what happened last October on the night of the blood moon. Our station sits deep in the mountain reserve, about 20 miles from the nearest town. It's mostly quiet, just the hum of radio chatter and the wind moving through pine needles. That night, I was the only one scheduled for the midnight shift. Blood moons always bring tourists, so I expected to deal with a few trespassers sneaking up the trails for photos. At 11:37 p.m., I checked the perimeter cameras. Everything looked still. The moon had turned the color of rust, washing the forest in this strange, dry red glow. Even the crickets were quiet. There's a sound you get used to out there, a kind of low, constant breathing from the forest itself. But around midnight, that sound stopped. It wasn't silence, it was absence, like the forest was holding its breath. I stepped outside to check the ridge trail. The air was colder than it should have been, sharp enough to sting my throat. I remember thinking it was too early in the season for frost. Then the first scream echoed across the valley. It wasn't human, not exactly. It started like a person shouting for help, then twisted into something deeper, wet and wrong, like an animal trying to mimic a voice. It came from the old fire lookout, a place that hadn't been used in years. I called it in over radio, but static answered me. The signal lights flickered once, then stayed dark. I was alone. So I grabbed my flashlight, my recorder, and started hiking toward the lookout. The trail was narrow and steep, the red moon hanging directly above me, bleeding light through the trees. The deeper I went, the quieter it got. No wind, no insects, not even my boots made much noise on the soil. Halfway up, I found a broken ranger cap. Ours. I checked the tag. It was assigned to Ranger Sloan, a guy who went missing from our district in 2019. They said he got lost in a storm and never came back. By the time I reached the lookout, my hands were shaking. The door was slightly open, and there was this rhythmic tapping coming from inside, slow and steady, like fingernails on glass. I lifted my recorder, pressed record, and pushed the door open. The tapping stopped. Inside, everything looked frozen in time. Dust-covered maps, a mug still half full, a broken lantern on the floor. But the smell, it was metallic, like old blood and rain. The recorder light blinked red once, twice, then stopped. That's when the scream came again, from inside the lookout. And this time, I swear, it sounded exactly like me. I froze. For a second, I thought I'd imagined it, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But no, the voice that had just screamed from somewhere below the floorboards was unmistakably mine. Same pitch, same tone. It was like hearing an echo from a place I'd never been. I swept my flashlight across the room. The beam caught motes of dust hanging motionless in the air. The lookout's floorboards creaked beneath my boots. I leaned closer to the trapdoor near the back wall. A square panel I didn't to remember being on the building plans. There was a faint vibration coming from beneath it, a slow pulse, like something was breathing under there. I crouched down and brushed the dust away from the latch. The wood was cold, colder than it should have been. I remember thinking, why would there be a cellar in a fire lookout tower? When I pulled the latch, a wave of stale air rolled out. It smelled like damp soil and iron. My flashlight barely cut through the darkness below. Then the voice came again, this time softer. Help me. I almost dropped the light because that wasn't just my voice. It was saying the exact words I shouted earlier into my radio when the signal died. I stood frozen at the edge of the opening, heart slamming against my ribs. Every instinct told me to run, but I had the recorder running, and some stupid part of me needed proof, needed to know what was happening. I pointed the light down and climbed the ladder. The air grew heavy the deeper I went, and by the time my boots hit the dirt floor, the trapdoor above had slammed shut on its own. I was standing in what looked like an old mining tunnel, rough walls, half-collapsed beams, and a narrow passage stretching into darkness. That's when I noticed the carvings, symbols scratched into the rock, circles intersected by lines, drawn over and over again, smeared with something dark, and in the center of one, a handprint. It looked human. I moved closer, recorder still running. I could hear the faintest echo of breathing further down the tunnel. Not mine, something lower. Then my flashlight flickered once, twice, and died completely. Pitch black, I hit the flashlight against my palm, but it wouldn't come back on. And in that darkness, I heard the unmistakable sound of someone walking toward me. Slow, dragging steps. My own voice whispered out of the black, "Why did you come back?" I turned and bolted toward where I thought the ladder was. But the wall was smooth stone. No ladder, no hatch, just cold rock. The footsteps were closer now, echoing in rhythm with my panicked breathing. Then, just before I screamed, something icy touched the back of my neck, and I heard my voice again, right behind me. "I told you not to listen to it." I don't remember turning around. 1 second, there was only blackness, and that whisper, my whisper, curling against the back of my ear. The next, my flashlight flickered back to life for a heartbeat, long enough for me to see something standing just a few feet away. It was me, or something wearing my face. Its skin looked stretched too tight, like it had been pressed against bone for far too long. The eyes were wrong, black pits reflecting nothing. Its mouth hung slightly open, trembling, as if trying to form words that didn't belong to it. When it spoke, it was like my voice recorded and distorted through an old tape. I saw it too. The second moon. That phrase. I didn't understand it at the time, but it said it again, louder. The sound filled the tunnel, shaking the dirt loose from the ceiling beams. "You shouldn't have heard it." The thing moved closer, twitching like a broken recording on loop. I stumbled back, slamming into the wall. My flashlight spun out of my hand, its beam crawling across the floor. And that S when I saw dozens of recorders scattered in the dirt. They were old, cracked, covered in dust, and all of them looked exactly like mine. I knelt, shaking, picking one up. It had a tag on the back, my initials, my handwriting, but the date carved into the metal was from 2 years ago. That's when I realized every ranger who'd gone missing in these mountains, they all might have been me. The walls began to hum, a deep vibration that crawled through the ground and up my legs. The carvings on the rock started to glow faintly red, same color as the moon outside. I could hear it then, even underground, that faint, distorted scream. echoing through the valley. My scream. The thing stepped closer until our faces were inches apart. I could smell the rot on its breath, like rusted metal and decay. Its lips twitched, and it whispered, "You left me down here last time." I swung the recorder at it. Out of reflex, the impact made a sharp metallic crack, and the tunnel went silent. For a moment, everything stopped vibrating. The creature stared at me, expressionless, before its face began to collapse in on itself, folding like paper being burned. I didn't wait. I scrambled into the darkness, running blindly until my shoulder hit a ladder rung. I climbed without thinking, lungs burning, until I burst through the hatch and fell into the cold air of the lookout. The trapdoor slammed shut behind me. When I looked out the window, the blood moon had sunk halfway behind the mountains. The valley below was completely still, except for one thing. Far off in the tree line, something was climbing the hill toward my tower, and under the crimson light, it looked exactly like me. I backed away from the window, my heart hammering so hard it hurt. The air inside the tower felt thick, like breathing through water. I kept the flashlight aimed at the door, even though the batteries were dying. Down below, the figure was still coming. Slowly, methodically, it moved like it had all the time in the world. Every step it took up that mountain trail seemed to echo inside my chest. The moonlight washed over it, the same red glow staining its pale face, and even from that distance, I could see it smiling. I grabbed the radio, hands trembling. "Base, this is Lookout 9. I need assistance immediately. Repeat, immediate." The radio hissed and then crackled with my own voice. "Copy that. Heading up now." Static swallowed the rest. I wanted to believe it was just interference, but deep down, I knew better. The figure was halfway up the slope now. The light caught the edge of its jacket. My jacket, torn at the shoulder, exactly where mine had snagged earlier in the tunnel. I backed into the corner of the lookout, clutching the recorder to my chest. It was still running, the little red light blinking faintly. I hit playback, needing proof that this wasn't just my mind breaking. At first, there was only my breathing. Then, faintly, a voice whispered through the static, "You're still down here?" My blood ran cold. The hatch behind me rattled. Once, twice, then stopped. I didn't move, didn't breathe. A minute passed, maybe more. Then, from outside the window, I saw something impossible. 2 blood moons hanging over the valley, one slightly higher than the other, both bleeding red light across the mountains. The lower one began to move, not drift, move, like something enormous crawling across the sky. Its light rippled through the trees, turning their shadows liquid. The figure stopped climbing and looked up at it, tilting its head in the same curious way I did when trying to make sense of something wrong. Then it turned back toward me and smiled wider. I stumbled toward the door, ready to bolt down the mountain, but as I grabbed the handle, the view outside flickered. The moonlight vanished for a second. The tower walls were gone, and I was back underground. The carvings glowed faintly around me, and the recorder slipped from my shaking hand, still playing the same phrase on loop. "You left me down here last time. You left me down here last time." Only now, it wasn't one voice. It was dozens, all of them mine. The tunnel filled with overlapping whispers, each one growing louder until they drowned everything else out. And somewhere above the noise, I thought I heard the blood moon scream,